This is the IBJ Podcast for the week of April the 8th, 2019. I'm Mason King. So, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. And today I am speaking to you from a school, or it's a former school, on the east side of downtown. And Max, do you recall, what was the school?
This was Vonnegut School number 9, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
School number 9.
And this is at least a century old.
Oh, yeah, 1899.
Yeah.
It's 120 plus.
Okay.
Or 120 this year.
So it was renovated about 20 years ago as office space. It currently is the home of technology firm Lessonly, which you guys lease space here.
Yeah.
And I am with Max Yoder, the founder and CEO of Lessonly.
This is going to be fun, isn't it?
It's going to be good. Make sure I explain this right. Lessonly very broadly makes software that customers can use to train their employees.
That's correct.
In the manner of skills, policies, processes.
You got it.
Okay. I have to tell you that this morning was the first time I made like the thematic confluence connection that Lessonly was located in a school.
Yeah, it really worked out well for us.
And you guys are going to go to another academic institution.
Yeah, IPS-owned building. It was IPS-owned from the start, and it just got bought by our new landlord, and we're moving in on 16th Street in the Monon.
Okay.
On the IPS building, it was all the instrument repair for IPS for decades. So pianos, violins, cellos, anything got centralized there, repaired there. And I actually hired somebody to tune my piano recently at my house, and he's the gentleman who's been working out of that building tuning all the IPS pianos. So I said, we're moving in there. And he was bummed to not be in the building anymore, but he was happy that somebody who cares about instruments was going to be there. And they gave us a few pianos as part of the deal, so that was helpful.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So how many employees do you have now?
110.
And how old is Lessonly?
Lessonly's going on 7 years, so we'll be 7 years old in July.
Okay, pretty fast growing company.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I am 31.
And I bring it up because to some people, to some perhaps unenlightened people, you might seem a little young to write a book about leadership and teamwork, which you have done.
Yeah.
It is called Do Better Work.
Yes.
Finding Clarity, Camaraderie, and Progress in Work and in Life. It is self-published by the company. It's been available on Amazon since March.
Yeah.
Is that right? Did it occur to you in the writing process that some people would be like, what does this guy have to teach me about leadership?
Yeah, it did. I was very much asking myself, what do I have to offer? And then I kind of pushed through that and said, well, we'll find out if there's anything to offer here once we get the book done. And fortunately, we found that a few folks who know what they're talking about are appreciative of it, and I'm very grateful for that.
Why did you think the world needed a new book on leadership?
Yeah, I think it's all of our jobs to try to restate really important things in new ways. And, we have a very specific audience that might not read any other book out there that speaks about similar behaviors that are really important. And it's our job to just communicate, hey, if we think there's behaviors that need to be known and people need to be reminded of them, we should put them in our terms and share them with folks. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we should have a lot of books on leadership that remind us of the fundamentals. And, I think about this more as a book on teamwork, which I think is an underserved market. Talking about being just a good teammate isn't something I see enough from a book standpoint. I see a lot of manager guides. I see a lot of, leadership books that are really geared toward managers. I think leadership can be done by anybody, and I think everybody should understand the fundamental behaviors of a good teammate.
And I'm going to go back in time. From what I remember, your parents were entrepreneurs, small business owners?
Yeah, my dad took over his dad's funeral home. So my dad and his brother run my grandpa's funeral home.
What did you pick up from your parents about leadership? We kind of talk about, what we bring to the table initially.
Yeah, my dad owning a funeral home taught me a lot about compassion. When you're engaging with people who are at very vulnerable moments in their life, and bringing compassion and empathy and caring to them is a very important thing. And he just fundamentally understood that. I saw my dad do wonderful things for people at their darkest times. And I would continue to go home and have people pull me aside and say, I just love your dad. And it means a lot to me. And they love my dad because he cares for them like he cares for me.
Here is my theory about this book, that it is secretly a set of sutras about leadership, that it is secretly kind of a Zen Buddhist script on leadership. And the fact that you brought up the word compassion immediately, helps prove out my theory.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of these chapters could have titles like rewritten as the right thinking leader has compassion. Yeah. The right thinking leader has or admits he doesn't know anything.
Or doesn't know everything.
Yeah, doesn't know everything, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had any kind of background in that kind of religious stuff. But that is what hit me. And also it's in the simplicity of the language.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah.
You think there's simplicity in the language. Tell me about that. Is that a positive thing?
So many leadership books, I think, try to pad out what they're trying to say, yep. To however many folios they're trying to make in the book, 400, 500 words with example upon example upon example. I think the writing in this story, in this book is so elegant and poignant and precise.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
And the anecdotes when they're there are so well chosen. It strikes me kind of as poetic in that way. Yeah,
well, it was really important to us that we gave people a book that wasn't long for the sake of being long, that kind of made its point and it stopped there, but gave a lot of examples. I think there's a lot of books that say the big why and maybe don't give you kind of how to implement that why. Why and what are easy, the kind of how is harder. So when I say something like ask clarifying questions, I can tell you why and I can tell you what matters about asking clarifying questions, but I need to teach you how to do it if I wanted to make a difference. And that was really good feedback from the team. They told me, hey, Max, don't write another one of those books that's a why and a what without the how, because we need to understand how to actually do it. We get the philosophy of it, but we need to understand how to make it practical.
Let me jump back to the idea of compassion. How do you think that manifested itself in the book, the things that you had kind of picked up from your dad?
Yeah, well, I have my worldview is the only thing I divide from is that which is divisive. So my whole worldview is on creating harmony. And I think we create harmony first by creating compassion in ourselves, just first being self-compassionate, learning to love ourselves, learning to work on the things that kind of hold us back from that self-love. Because there's a lot of things in us that, every one of us, that has things in us that hold us back from self-compassion. And I think in the journey of trying to be more self-compassionate, we become more empathetic because we see how challenging it is to work through our own things. And when we see somebody else trying to work through their things, we can be more compassionate and empathetic toward that because we know how challenging it is when we do it ourselves. So I like to think that there's a worldview that I just want to keep trumpeting, that is let's bring more harmony to the world. And that's not that kind of like touchy-feely harmony of like let's just all learn to be nice to one another. It's like let's all learn to love ourselves, and in that process of working through our own challenges, I think we can inspire and motivate one another to work on their, I can ideally inspire you or somebody else to work on their own challenges, and we can all just become calmer and kinder to one another. The book Do Better Work is really just all about leading with compassion and always coming to your teammate with giving them the benefit of the doubt.
So the book revolves around a few basic concepts, and the two of them are in the title.
Yeah.
There's clarity and camaraderie. Yeah. Practically speaking, how do I bring those to my work?
Yeah, so the 8 behaviors that I lay out in the book around being vulnerable, sharing before you're ready, asking clarifying questions, looking for opportunity, every one of them is a behavior that is vulnerable. And when we engage in those vulnerable behaviors, we naturally create more clarity or camaraderie or a combination of the two. Asking clarifying questions, when I seek to understand what you really mean, I'm not just becoming clearer, I'm showing that I care about what you have to say. And it's all in the way that I do that, right? All the way that I approach clarifying question to not put you on your heels, but say, oh, Max cares enough about what I have to say that he wants to really understand it, instead of superficially go, oh, thanks for opening your mouth. Let's move on. Every behavior in the book, all 8 of them, are rooted around how to create more clarity and camaraderie. And I believe those two things are really important, because once we have camaraderie, it's mutual trust and respect. Once we trust and respect one another, if we have clarity about what we're after, we're probably going to get it done. And we're probably going to get it done well. We're going to make progress. So clarity and camaraderie are the ingredients that lead us to progress, and they're built on the behaviors that I lay out throughout the 8 chapters.
Vulnerability. Yeah. That is also a big one. It's one of the first ones I believe.
Yeah, it is chapter 1.
What does that mean in a work setting?
It means just acknowledging reality. That's all it is. It's just acknowledging what is true. I don't know the answer. I don't know what to do. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm excited. I think if you really think about a spectrum of when something goes really, really well, I think we struggle as humans to show gratitude and appreciation just as much as when something doesn't go well, we really struggle to have that difficult conversation. And there's 2 chapters back to back, one called Highlight What's Working, which is about when things are going well, we need to talk about them. And when there's conflict, that's the next chapter, Have Difficult Conversations, we need to talk about it. On the spectrum, those 2 tail ends, I think we struggle at both ends. And because they're vulnerable things. They expose our inner emotions. And I didn't get a lot of education growing up about how to talk about my emotions. I didn't get a lot of examples growing up about people talking through their struggles and also on the gratitude side sharing their appreciation. I just wish we'd learn more of that in school. I think we learn a lot about things that matter, but I think we leave a lot out that really matters. And when I think about conflict and when I think about appreciation, I'd love to see more of those in our education.
Yeah, so people, I think there's definitely a school of thought, or just sort of a general strain in our society of thought that vulnerability is weakness, and that bosses are supposed to be invulnerable. And you talk a little bit about this in the book. How do you convince somebody who thinks that being the boss means knowing it all, and admitting no weakness, that person's changed their tact?
Yeah, well, if you are that boss who thinks that's the posture to take, don't be surprised when everybody who reports to you hides the things from you that are really happening in your organization. Because if you are putting an act on that you have it all together, you know all the answers, and you kind of dominate life, they're going to believe that that's what they're supposed to do. It's just modeling. You're modeling the behavior that you are encouraging other people to then model themselves. What I want to know from my teammates is how I can help, what's working, what isn't working. I want to know reality, because if we don't have reality to root our decisions off of, our decisions aren't going to be very good. So don't be surprised if that's the posture that you want to take, that people begin to hide reality from you. And you can get mad at them when they do it, but it ultimately starts with you. When you make it possible for people to speak up and say, I don't know, or I'm stuck, or it looks like we're about to run into an iceberg, strategically, or it looks like we're going to miss an opportunity strategically. People will be scared to bring those things up if you don't make them comfortable. And you make them comfortable by calling out when you yourself are nervous, when you yourself are worried about missing an opportunity, when you admit that you don't have all the answers. It's just modeling. I would much rather go on the angle of actually understanding reality than posturing and not getting the full picture.
In terms of putting that concept into action, when it came time to edit the book, you turned to not just a few people on your team, but dozens and dozens of people at Lessonly for input. What was that process like?
It was beautiful. I had a couple of big fears, one of which was, I would first and foremost fail myself in the process of writing the book, and then I would fail the team, and they would kind of laugh about the book behind my back, or somebody would say, hey, I heard your boss wrote a book, and they go, yeah, don't read it. That was a very big fear, that I'm representing the company in an important way, and that I was going to let them all down by writing something that didn't live up to, I think, our shared standard. So sharing it with them early was a vulnerable gesture, but it was also helping me say, hey, don't let me put something out there that is silly. Don't let me miss something that you see. I told folks, you have the opportunity to edit anything in this book. Call it anything that's working for you, that isn't working for you, that's missing. But do it now. Don't do it after it's bound and published, because that's too late. And they answered that call. We had more than 40 people on the team who at least read a chapter and left a comment. I'm not just saying read. More than 40 people here read, but left a comment, actually gave some input on a chapter. And that was a beautiful thing, because in some cases, Ben and myself, Ben was the editor of the book, my teammate, we'd seen this stuff for too long. And somebody said, if you pulled this part up to the top, I think the whole thing would make more sense. And it was almost like Lego bricks. You click it off and you click it in at a different spot, and you're like, wow, that does look a lot better. That does read a lot better. I think it was also very important for them to know that this is not my book. This is our book. My name might be on the front of it, but this is representing Lessonly. So share. Let me know what I'm missing, and let me know what you love, because it's so important to let me know what they love, so I don't delete that. In my moments of weakness, any part of this book looked like a bad part of the book, So when people highlighted the things that they loved, I was less likely to kill those later. It was just a great team effort.
I think I'd heard you say before that in the process of writing the book, you discovered that you were carrying contradictory ideas of leadership. Can you give me an example of what that meant?
Yeah, so there was a chapter that ultimately became Get More Agreements that I was writing about owning the request. And the whole idea was I was really begging my teammates to own their request, not just say something once and then be like, well, I said it and it didn't happen, 6 weeks later, 6 months later, because I've had some frustrating occurrences where I wish somebody wouldn't have stopped at their first request. And so owning the request was this idea of, hey, if you really want something to happen, own it. As I began to write, I started to realize how onerous it was on the maybe the individual contributor, and how maybe it let the manager off the hook. And I didn't realize until I tried to write the kind of play-by-play of how to do it that was happening. So I ultimately had to stop and go, oh, this isn't how I actually want people to behave. And I do want people to own their requests, but I want them to do it in the construct of agreements that I lay out. Instead of having unspoken expectations or kind of mildly spoken expectations, let's have a negotiated arrangement where you have a shared course of action. That's an agreement.
Did that change then how you run the company?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It changes how I run the company because I'm clearer and I have more examples, and my teammates don't have to guess what I need from them. They know what I need from them. It says it in the book. This is first and foremost written for the 100 people on these walls. If it only ever helped 100 people on these walls, we'd probably call it a success. But the idea was it's going to help. If it helps people on these walls, then it will help people outside of these walls. Because this is just teamwork, right?
And essentially, yeah. These are the behaviors that I expect.
Yeah.
And when we talk about our process, this is the process.
This is the process. Yeah, it's cool because we can send this to people who are applying or who've just taken a job here, and before they walk in, it only takes an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on kind of your reading speed, to get through the whole book. And the really cool thing is people are finishing it, and then they can reread a given chapter. But each chapter is 10 to 15 minutes tops. I think the longest one is probably, tops is not true. The longest one is about 20 minutes to have difficult conversations, but on average.
Here's the chapter, I think the last one, that kind of resonated with me, is bring brightness into the room. Yeah. Quickly tell me what brightness means.
Yeah, bringing brightness to the room is just kind of bringing your best self to the room. It's bringing your positivity and your excitement for the task at hand. We can energize ourselves into a brighter mindset by simply acting happier. When we smile, we become happier. There's a gentleman named Arthur Brooks who just wrote a book called Love Your Enemies, and he talks about how a lot of people believe that feelings precede action, and he argues that frequently it's actually actions that precede feelings. If we behave in gracious ways that create gratitude, we feel gratitude. So our actions can create positive feelings. The whole idea of bringing brightness to the room is, if you bring energy, other people feel that energy. So if you bring negative energy, they will feel it. If you bring positive energy, they will feel it. That's a great power we all have. So how do you use your power? How do you show up in a room? Do you bring everybody down with you, or do you try to bring everybody up? And the energy with which we work on a project matters a ton. And I've seen people be able to deplete the room. I've personally been able to deplete the room, and I've been able to elevate the room just like anybody else. And the really cool thing about the chapter is it dives into the fact that it's not the manager's tone that sets the room's tempo. It's everybody's tone that sets the room. One person starts digging their heels in. One person starts saying this is a waste of time, or starts checking their phone and kind of checking out. That affects the entire room. So the more aware we are that we have a power, like that we have a superpower, and how we influence the emotions of the room, it's contagious. I think the more likely people are to kind of look at themselves and go, what am I bringing to this room right now?
So I completely believe that, but but maybe this is a natural consequence of working in the newspaper industry. I have worked with a lot of people who are natural contrarians, who are argumentative. I haven't met anybody in the newspaper business who isn't argumentative, mm-hmm. and who often are just in a bad mood and extremely stressed out all the time. I mean, that's the industry. And some of those people were our most successful teammates. Is there room in the organization for those guys?
Yeah, I don't want it to come off as you have to be bubbly and fake. I want it to come off as, if you come in there and say, let's nail this, even if you're intense, if you just say, like, let's crush this. This is going to be an awesome project. We're going to make sure it's an awesome project. I don't care if you're brows furrowed and you're intense. If you get other people excited about the project, I'm on board. And if you disagree with the direction, by all means, you should say that. The way in which you say it is incredibly important. Silencing somebody's from speaking up ever again probably wasn't a great way. If that was the outcome of whatever you said, that wasn't a great way to approach it, because we need to increase communication. We need to create safety in a room. There will always be exceptions to every rule. And we can point to any exception and say, well, it worked for that person. That does not mean the rule isn't the rule.
And you are, I think, a naturally empathetic person. Is this book going to be as effective for somebody who has a big ego, or somebody who over the course of their career has been rewarded for being kind of a hard-charging, me-first person?
Yeah, I don't know how to help those folks if they don't want to change. And I'm not trying to reach the folks who are kind of dug in and they say, all I ever do is what I want to do is tell people what to do and kind of command and control and be an authoritarian or a coercive leader. What I want to do is reach folks who say, oh, that's an option to come at this with compassion and empathy and still get things done. I don't think we're aware enough that it's an option to be to be a leader and to not know the answer and to still get things done. I would like to be living proof that you can get things done and not know all the answers. And I just like to make sure more people are aware of it. But it's not about converting, the global populace to this way. It's about one person at a time taking on a little different approach to teamwork. And ideally that compounds in a really big and important way.
What was the most eye-opening bit of feedback you got?
I think what's really taken me in a really positive, been really positive to me is how many people cite the leaders know the answer versus leaders learn the answer. So I break down in the second chapter that there's a common notion that leaders know the answer, which you've alluded to. They know the way, they have the answer, they dominate life. And I offer that myth needs to go away, and we need to create the leaders learn the answer approach. And just that simple one-word changes creates these dramatic shifts in behavior, and how people have latched onto that and said, like, that's the approach I'm going to take to life, is that leaders learn the answer. That has been incredibly rewarding, just to give people, for leaders learn the answer.
As you prepare for the big move, have you noticed that your approach to that project has changed?
So yeah, we're moving office spaces at 16th Street, and I have not had much to do with it. So my approach has not changed there, no, because I haven't had much to do with it. I've got teammates who are all over it, and that's a big kind of symbolic part of giving space. They gave me space to write the book, and they manage projects like that. Yeah. The cool thing is a lot of people pitched in who never wrote a word in the book to make sure the book could get written. And the 16th Street move is a great example of that. Megan Jarvis, Brian Montmany, they led that project and they lead that project. They're our director of talent and finance and operations leader, and they were able to take that on so that I didn't have to, and I got to write the book as a result.
Great. Well, we'll check in with you when you guys make the move.
I would love that. We'll come to that office, do another podcast.
Right on. Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Mason.
Hey, my thanks again to Max. Before you get on with your week, I want to bring to your attention a few stories from this week's edition of IBJ. Anthony Shutley explores the possible repercussions of radio station owner Cumulus Media buying 3 more stations in the Indianapolis area, giving it 6 total, and the reach to challenge locally based Emmis Communications. Also this week, Sam Quinn examines complaints from residents of Fishers that the fast-growing city is growing too fast and losing its homespun charm, a train of thought that mayoral candidate Logan Day has decided to ride. And in Indianapolis, Republican mayoral candidate Jim Merritt is using potholes to attack Mayor Joe Hogsett as he tries to paint the incumbent as out of touch with everyday residents. And again, you can read all about it in the copy of IBJ that you undoubtedly have delivered to your home or office or at IBJ.com. As always, if you would like unfettered access to all of IBJ's award-winning content, just hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for making time for the IBJ Podcast, which is edited by Leslie Weidenbender. I'm Mason King, and we'll be back again next week.